It is in some ways surprising. Livni is not a natural ally of Netanyahu. Netanyahu has not been particularly enthusiastic about the peace process, about negotiating settlement with the Palestinians. Livni, on the other hand, is a strong proponent of the two-state solution. Now, the nature of Israeli coalition politics means that we often have unlikely alliances, and in that sense, this is not perhaps unusual. However, Livni is unique in that she had retired ostensibly from politics. She has been extremely critical of Netanyahu and his stance on negotiations with the Palestinians. And she has said, when she decided to come back to contest the most recent legislative elections, that she would not serve as his, quote, fig leaf. So Livni's decision to formally take her party into a Netanyahu-led coalition suggests that she believes that Netanyahu is willing to bend and give her some sort of room. She's also been charged with negotiating with the Palestinians to move that issue forward. So it's not a radical step. It doesn't overturn the nature of Israeli politics. Nevertheless, it does suggest that we might be seeing a slight move towards the possibility of a resumption of negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians, led by a woman who appears personally committed to their success.
There are a couple of arguments to be made for a couple of different cabinet ministers, but this week I think there's a great argument to be made that John Baird, the foreign affairs minister, is the best Harper cabinet minister at earning good press. He is just concluding a trip to Latin America. He visited a few countries, Mexico, Peru, Cuba, Panama, and the Dominican Republic. He never made it to Venezuela. They canceled on him sort of at the last minute, the 11th hour, but coming out of that trip, he received really nothing but praise or maybe neutral coverage from the press corps. He went to Mexico and he talked about that country's importance to Canada as an ally when it comes to particularly trade, and as talks continue in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, as Mexico being sort of an ally and Canada being at that table. He went to Panama and he went to Peru and he just praised their ability to have robust, what he called vibrant markets that prove that if you open up your market, your economy improves and becomes more dynamic. Even when he was rebuffed by the Venezuelans when Hugo Chavez returned from a Cuban medical facility, he sort of just played it off, and no one really made a big deal out of John Baird being shut out of Venezuela. So he comes back with a bunch of good news clippings, under his belt, and he moves on to whatever's next. This just comes a week after he had a little exchange in question period with Winnipeg MP Pat Martin about Canada's plans to stamp out a zombie apocalypse were it ever to threaten Canada, something that produced guffaws in the House of Commons and kind of went viral on YouTube. Over 1 million people around the world watched this video of John Baird being funny in the House of Commons, and he's just got this ability to win over people, and this week was an example of that.
No, the Canada-European trade deal it's not out of danger, but it is in no more danger than it was at any point during the whole 5 years they've been talking about it. What happened this week was that the excellently named Karel de Gucht, the European Trade Commissioner, said he walked away from the last round of trade negotiations because what Canada was offering in terms of market access wasn't good enough. And he says, we're not going to sign a deal that isn't good enough. Two things. First of all, this is the kind of table thumping that always comes at the end of a negotiation. In 1987-88, when Mulroney was negotiating free trade with the United States, he had his trade negotiator, Simon Reisman, stomp out of a meeting there, announcing that the Americans weren't serious. And this made the Americans a little bit more serious. We got a slightly better deal. I suspect the Europeans are doing something like that now. Secondly, they've always said this. 3 years ago at a conference in Montreal, the head negotiator for the Europeans said, we will walk away from a deal that isn't good enough because we're after bigger fish than Canada. We're after free trade deals with India, with the United States, maybe someday with China, and we need a good deal with Canada to serve as a model for all those other deals. What's really happening is that since the new year, all of the trade-offs that need to be made for there to be a deal, or that need to be rejected if there will be no deal, have been sitting on Prime Minister Harper's desk, and he's got to make a decision. He's got to decide whether Canada will gain enough and be seen to be gaining enough through a trade deal with Europe that it can stand the political damage of upsetting dairy farmers, generic pharmaceutical manufacturers, drug purchase plans and their clients, which is elderly Canadians who might have to pay more for extended patent protection, things like that. So it comes down to a political decision. It's been a political decision really from the start, and the occasional noises that we'll see out of the negotiations are not the real test of the thing. The real test of the thing is, does Stephen Harper think he's got anything to gain from this? And as with most things, he's a bit of a black box on this. We'll just have to wait and see.